I was an atheist for much of my life. I thought that the idea of God was absurd. I thought that God didn't create people, but people created God because they were afraid of death, and so they manufactured this idea of this benevolent jelly bean in the sky, make themselves feel better when they died, that sort of thing. And so I lived a life that was consistent with that, and sort of made up my morality as I went, and fell into some narcissistic and self-destructive kind of behaviors as a result. My wife was more in spiritual neutral, sort of agnostic, didn't quite know what to believe. She met a neighbor who was a Christian who shared her faith with her. My wife kind of checked it out over many months and decided to become a follower of Christ, which I thought was the worst possible news I could get. I thought she was going to turn into some sexually repressed prude or something, was going to spend all her time on Skid Row serving the poor or something. It's not what I signed up for, and I was going to walk out on her. But I stuck around and began to see positive changes in her character and values and the way she related to me and the kids. And it was winsome and it was attractive. And so one day she invited me to church, and I went. And I heard the message of Jesus explained in a way I could understand. And I didn't believe it yet, but I realized this is really important if it's true. And so I decided to take my legal training, my journalism training, and investigate whether there was any credibility to any world religion, much less Christianity. So it launched me on what turned out to be a nearly 2-year investigation of the evidence. And I looked at the scientific evidence for the existence of God. I looked at historical evidence. Did Jesus live? Did he claim to be the Son of God? Did he authenticate that claim by returning from the dead in the resurrection? And I spent almost 2 years doing that until one Sunday afternoon on November the 8th of 1981, I realized it would take more faith to maintain my atheism than to become a Christian. My life began to change. My values, my character, my attitude, my philosophy, my worldview, my relationships, my priorities, all these things began to change over time for the good. I think that a lot of atheists think, that Christians think, that you cannot live a good life if you're an atheist. You must be immoral, you must be living a life of depravity and so forth if you are an atheist, that you can't do good, you can't serve humankind and so forth. That's ridiculous. That's not what Christians think. I think what sometimes people misunderstand, what is the moral argument for the existence of God? The moral argument is this: without God, it is not possible to have universal moral values. And yet we do have universal moral values, therefore God must exist. That's sort of the moral argument for God. The moral argument is not, hey, you can't live a good life unless you're a Christian. There's lots of nice atheists, lots of folks who don't believe in God, and they make good neighbors. I have neighbors in my neighborhood who are avowed atheists. And you know what? They're fine people, and I appreciate them, and I try to be a good neighbor to them as well. So I think sometimes there's a misconception of what atheists think that Christians think of them. And I think most Christians look at atheists and say, man, we disagree, but you're just a person like I am. Yeah, I think there are atheists who feel they've been misunderstood or mistreated by Christians who come off as arrogant, as we have the truth and you don't, and you're blind and headed for hell and you don't even realize it, and talk to them in ways that are demeaning or impersonal. And on the other hand, there are Christians who feel abused by atheists. I've had atheists who've, misrepresented my positions, who've lied about me, who've printed things that have twisted what I've said in demonstrably false ways. So I think, unfortunately, there can be damage and hurt on both sides. And I think the best thing we can do is say, you know what, as Christians, we're called to love people. And that should be our mission. But there's no way I can coerce them or try to impose my beliefs on them. That's not my goal. Jesus told me to love all people and to be open to opportunities to tell them about what I found in my life has made a huge difference.